Tuhi mai nei, morena, and good morning and welcome to your wonderful Finance and Performance Committee meeting. I will start with apologies, and I have apologies received from Councillor Fletcher for absence and Councillor Sayers from lateness. Councillor Darby and Bartley also for lateness on council business as they're at the Planning Committee pre-agenda run through. Any other apologies? Just received a text from Councillor Hills for lateness. We have no attendance by electronic link. Declarations of interest.
Chair, in relation to the accommodation provider targeted rate discussion, I don't have a conflict of interest to declare and I will be participating. I haven't provided any affidavit as a brief of evidence for an appeal, so I'm very comfortable to participate in that vote.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll just go back to the apologies and move those apologies. Thank you, Councillor Cooper, for seconding. All those in favour say aye. Departure from Member Taiperi too. Thank you, Member Taiperi. Confirmation of minutes. I'd like to move the minutes from the 18th of March meeting be true and correct record. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Seconded by Councillor Mulholland. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you. I have received no petitions. We now go straight to public input and we welcome to the table members from the Auckland War Memorial Museum. We have David Reeves, Megan McSweeney and Jignasha Patel. Welcome. Morena.
Very good. Well, thank you for this opportunity to present to you. We are grateful for the Council's continuing support of the Auckland War Memorial Museum. I understand that councillors have now received the full draft annual plan document. We were a little disappointed that the full document wasn't circulated earlier, but because it does in fact form the very important document that signals the intentions of the museum and forms a key part of the relationship between council and the museum, both from the point of view of costs, but importantly also the intended activities and the value and benefits that the museum provides to the Auckland community and in fact wider New Zealand. We have been encouraged by the relationship that has been improving between the councillors and the museum through the Rangatira Forum, and we're confident that that will continue to improve, and greater transparency and lock in a good process for the coming year's setting of the annual plan for subsequent years. We are confident that the museum's existing legislation has quite a bit of scope to make changes to that relationship and continue to provide a range of benefits for Aucklanders. And finally, my note of the offer we have made to councillors to come and visit the museum behind the scenes. A number of you have been for the visits, and we've certainly enjoyed being able to show you the breadth and depth of activity that goes on in the museum beyond the very obvious public-facing activities. And I reiterate our invitation to those of you who've not yet been able to come to make yourselves available, and we'd be happy to facilitate a tour for you. So thank you again, and I'd be happy to take any questions from councillors.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the museum, either on the full report that was emailed through last night? And I just want to apologise on behalf of staff for not sending that through earlier. Thank you. Your Worship?
Not a question, just a recommendation to my colleagues around the table. I had the chance last week, was it, to have a look at behind the scenes, and there are fantastic things there, and there are now guided tours for people that I think it's you pay for the cost of it, but to see all the things that are happening in the museum, what you see on display is the tip of the iceberg. What you see behind the scenes is really fascinating, including, I think, the fossilised remains of it. Was it an 8 million year old dinosaur? which is pretty incredible since I didn't know that there were dinosaurs ever in New Zealand, but this goes back to Gondwana land. And just to acknowledge the work that the museum does, and it's some of the latest displays on Auckland and the wraparound display screen are really world class. So congratulations on what you're doing there, much appreciated. And I'm sorry we're not in a better financial position to be able to to do other than what we've had to do in terms of holding the funding. That's out of necessity, and it's what everybody faces, so don't feel singled out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Your Worship. Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and welcome. I was going through your full report this morning, and one of the things that struck me was the visitation numbers you're projecting going forward. It's a substantial, almost threefold increase. What are you basing that around?
So that's our expectation, that seeing that without a year of lockdowns, so this is assuming that New Zealand continues to stabilise its COVID response. We have been very conservative with regard to overseas tourists. So that is the figures we have is based on appealing to Aucklanders. We have a very active program of international exhibitions coming. We've been able to secure a program out 2 or 3 years now. And through our market research shows that those are the kinds of things that Aucklanders are motivated to come and see, as well as the range of community-based projects where we continue to build that support. We have seen post-COVID lockdowns that Aucklanders are very keen to have somewhere safe and reassuring to come and gather. And in fact, just this week with the school holidays and the opening of the new Tamaki Herringa Waka galleries, it's really thriving. So we're feeling optimistic, and of course none of us can predict exactly how things are going to pan out in the next year or two, but those are our best estimates.
Great. I'm looking, hopefully, a realisation when it comes to reality. That's great news. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. Kia ora koutou. I'm just going to make a comment, and it's sort of on the building on what Mayor Goff said. I think for me, Councillor Henderson and I visited you last week, and just looking at that building and the complexity of it, and just the basic keeping the thing up and in good order and really working well is difficult. But I will go on the tack of this is much more than a regional museum. This is a national museum, and the scope of what you do. I mean, even the project you're doing, the places you're getting artefacts from, the insect, the whole everything, the natural history is from right across New Zealand. And so I think one of our jobs is really to be lobbying central government to support this, because there's so much important natural history and New Zealand history, Māori history and Pacific history in there that I don't think it's unrivaled. And I do think it's probably our duty to Aucklanders to lobby to get some support from government for this, because it's actually untenable for us to be able to keep it up ourselves. But also I hope that the projections do come true, because I see too that when it's free for Aucklanders, when they're in tough times, they want to go really good quality places that don't cost them much. You know, it might just be a cup of coffee or a sandwich, and they can do that. But it's a place that's pretty accessible. It's fantastic. And the new, what I see about the new Te Waka Herringa gallery exhibition is that you can see yourself in it as an Aucklander. You know, the statistics in that rival statistics New Zealand. I would rather go there to try and find something out about Auckland than try to use the New Zealand statistics site. It isn't possible. So at a glance, you know, it's all touchscreen. It's incredible. So thank you for the work you've done, because it's not easy. And I mean, we always want to kind of duck shove and let someone else have to do that, you know, get the money. But I think, you know, I've had a new awakening. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Walker.
Sure. Just got a question, and it's further to the matters that some other councillors have raised as it goes to your reporting. It's pretty clear, and was very clear from the tour that I had, that the Auckland Museum has got a whole range of activities that are vital, both Auckland but also nationally. There's the conservatorial role, obviously, as it goes to your collection and so on. But particularly as it goes to those things that relate to the national significance of the museum, is it possible in your reporting to identify that kind of value, which can be expressed in dollar terms, but could equally be expressed in other ways? And I think the other thing that was also relevant, and I don't have enough concept of it, is it's very clear that there's a very strong volunteer relationship with the museum, and it would be useful to quantify that. And this kind of metric relates both to the museum, but it also relates to the zoo and other entities, both within council and outside of council, that we engage with, that go to their reporting. And similar circumstances where there's both a regional value, but there's also a national value.
Certainly it's something that we have been doing some thinking about, and it's probably a useful topic to consider in the Rangatira Forum also, with regard to national value and where that conversation might go. In terms of quantifying it, it would probably be more in the nature of narrative rather than numeric measures. But it's certainly something that our teams are aware of all the time, because we know that the interactions we have with iwi right around the country, with inquiries, in fact, overseas and around New Zealand, daily we're aware of the connections and impact we have at a national level. So we can certainly put some work into thinking how we reflect that in a useful way.
Thank you. Councillor Hills.
Oh, no, Madam Chair, it's not a question again. But I think Councillor Coombe and I were two of the first to do the tour after it was delayed last year because of lockdown, and I'm so glad to hear that you're hosting everyone else if they want it, because I think it gave me a huge insight into what's going on. I guess my question is around the Tamaki Hiringa Waka exhibition, which is, I've only seen it when it was half done, sort of before it opened. What are the numbers like? Because I haven't seen you promote it as much as maybe I expected. And the other part is, are you on track to open the other new spaces where we were talking a couple of months ago?
Yes, we are on track to open the other spaces. They're under construction this week, and so in a few weeks' time they will be fully open. They are principally education spaces, but obviously opens at the weekend for families and children to enjoy as well. The promotion of Tamaki Hiringa Waka has been a carefully planned affair, because it's a long-term gallery with over 500 stories embedded in there. And so we're wanting to raise general awareness that there's something new to come and see. And we've got a program of activity to zero in on specific stories over, because we want to be able to refresh that promotion over a longer period of time. And it's a relatively complex set of stories, and so our marketing efforts are going from the generic to the specific and over an extended period. So yeah, that's certainly part of the program.
The exhibition is I just couldn't believe it actually, and how diverse what you've got in that space about Tamaki Makaurau is pretty phenomenal. The other thing I just want to thank you for, I extended I guess I pushed a group of young vision impaired and blind young people to come see you guys, because I thought it might be a cool thing to interact with and hear stories from the people who work at the museum, and they are raving about it and thanking me and thanking you all, and just said that the staff who spoke to them and worked with those young people were phenomenal. So thank you so much to your team.
Thank you. Councillor Coombe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kia ora koutou. Thank you so much for coming along today. I think Councillor Cooper made a really good point about that you're providing what we have in the museum as a national treasure, and we really need to be pushing government on the funding more. So thank you for making that point, Councillor. I just, in terms of the scheme of things, there's just one thing that jumped out of me in your report at page 47 about access to the museum, and this is where I have an interaction with the museum regularly because of being on the Domain Committee, and I'm really sorry that, you know, the access to the museum is getting really difficult because the Domain has been turned into Auckland's second biggest car park for commuters, and we know that school holidays come along and it's even more pressure, and that short-term parking is not there, and that the access links, and you know, it should be far more accessible. It's right by the city centre, but you can't even walk on a nice route from the city centre. So that's very much on my mind, and something that you know, with David has been really leading that need to improve accessibility to the museum. So I'm sure you're really feeling it with the school holidays right now, but absolutely, I know, Madam Chair, that's very much on all of our minds on the Domain Committee. So kia ora, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Look, just one final question from me then, and it's a financial one. I'm aware that the philanthropic community of Auckland have contributed quite significantly to the museum. What percentage of your revenue has come from that source, and how do you see that growing in the future, or how do you see that percentage changing year by year?
Sure. I think I'll hand over to my colleague Jignasha Patel, who's got her hands across the money. Sure.
Thank you. You're absolutely right. Philanthropic support is incredibly important to the museum. It is, the role it plays is significant from a capital development perspective. In our operational revenues that that you see in the plans and all of that, we get a modest level. We have had some MB funding that came for the first time that spans 5 years from now. That's a significant project that's coming in, but it is very project related. So it has an associate, as you can appreciate, expenditure to deliver the project. The funding from a capital perspective ranges depending on the capital development program. We have had in the past in the realms of $3 to $4 million of funding coming through, but it is very specific to the development we are doing. We've enjoyed support in the heritage part of programs. For the recent transformation, we had support from the Lottery Commission on that, and minor pieces. So it is, general terms, probably about 20 to 30% would be a very high level, but it is very specific to galleries under development.
Thank you for that. Well, with no further questions, I'd just like to thank you again for coming to present to us. We all value who and what you do, who you are and what you do for Auckland. It's a magnificent facility, and we all appreciate the work that you do. Thank you very much.
We move it, we're going to get the name right for Jignasha Patel instead of James.
Oh, sorry, that was a... Can we just change that? Okay, so I will move a vote of thanks. Do I have a seconder, Your Worship? Yes. Thank you. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you.